Hey friends, so today we're talking about how I got started writing and selling fiction on Amazon, and I'm going to essentially give you the blueprint for how you can start doing the same. Okay, so really my story starts somewhere in 2020. We know what was going on in 2020. I started reading fiction, fell especially in love with romance, the romance genre, and I fell in love with sweet romance specifically. And the reason why I bring this up is because I fell in love with sweet romance. That's the genre I wanted to write in. And therein lies my first point. It's really important for you to decide what genre you want to write in when you start, if you want to sell your fiction. I currently self-publish, and it doesn't matter whether you want to self-publish or you want to traditionally publish, right? It's important for you to know your genre. Now, because I had read a lot in the sweet romance genre, I kind of knew how the stories go. I kind of knew the tropes. I'll talk a little bit about that, the tropes that I usually, that people usually flock to. So for instance, when I talk about a trope, you'll see that sweet romance especially has the billionaire trope. It has the cowboy trope. It has the tropes of best friend to sweethearts, or enemies to lovers, or, second chance. So these are tropes, right? And if you watch any movie, okay, any movie that's out there, doesn't matter what you're watching, usually they follow tropes. The reason why so many of us still watch shows like CSI and Law and Order is because there is a specific plan that story follows, and I don't want to conflate story structure with a trope. That they're two different things. But police procedurals are a type of trope, and we usually expect it to go a particular way. And so when we sit down to watch any favorite show of ours, we know that there's going to be a progression of things, even if it is a series that is continuing. We know how there's always going to be a moment in the show where it's like the low point, and at the end there's a high point, usually, often, or sometimes people like really mess it up and then give us a low point to end to hold us in suspense till the next time. Anyway, my point is that if you want to start writing and selling your fiction, at least start with knowing one genre really, really well. And this will require that you read in that genre. I've seen people try to write a type of fiction that they do not read. I'm not saying it's impossible for you to do that, but as somebody who loves sweet romance, it just made sense for me to write the stuff that I love. Okay, so read a genre you want to write in, potentially a genre that you love, and study it. Now, whilst I was really reading it just for my enjoyment, but also studying it, I came across these two books that I'm going to recommend to anybody. The first one is Story Genius by Lisa Crone, and the other one is The Story Equation. I don't know if it's coming in focus. The Story Equation by Susan May Warren. Susan May Warren has published over 80 books. She's a hybrid author. That means that she has published both as a self-published author and also as a traditional published author with a publishing house. So she really knows what she's saying, and I followed her story equation for my books, and out the gate the book started really working really well for people, right? So if you want to start seeing some success out the gate, these two books, The Story Equation and Lisa's The Story Genius, both are must-haves for you as a budding author. When you read it, you'll understand, but please get them, because before I had read these books, I had written one piece of fiction. It was a short piece of fiction, and later on, after I read these books, I went back to review that book, and whilst I got certain things right just on my own, there were so many reasons why that story did not work and why it didn't resonate when I first wrote it and put it out there on Amazon. Versus a few years later, I took my time, I read these books, and then in August of 2020, when I really started publishing in earnest, it was really night and day. So highly recommend these books. and also recommend that you know the genre that you want to write in. As I prepared to self-publish and sell my books, I also looked for what is known as your comparable authors, or sometimes you hear people call them comp authors, right? Why is this important? Okay, so the biggest retailer of books in the world is Amazon. Okay, now, you know, it's none of my business, but recently I heard that some people were suing Amazon for being the biggest book publisher or book seller in the world. So it's not my business, but I just thought I would share that tea with you. But whatever the case is, they are the biggest bookseller. And so everybody who writes a book does put it on Amazon. Now, when you go to an author's Amazon page and you scroll down just a little bit, you'll notice that there are these authors on the bottom of the page, or the author page. These are that person's comparable authors. That means that these authors, for instance, if you enjoy Nicholas Sparks' books, then it's likely that you're going to enjoy Colleen Hoover's books. I haven't read any of these people's books, but they're big enough and similar enough that Amazon puts them together because they see that there is a crossover of readers, and Amazon has collected a lot of data on this. There's a crossover of readers who read Nicholas Sparks' books and Colleen Hoover's books, and then there's some other authors that they're going to put down this. So what happens is when somebody buys Nicholas Sparks' book on Amazon, well, Amazon may also begin recommending Colleen Hoover's books through email, right? I get emails every single day of Amazon offering me books based on other authors that I've read. And so this is really important because this could be potentially a really great way for other readers to find you, not just on Amazon's website itself, but Amazon sends out emails that say, if you like this person's book, then we think we're going to like this other person's book. So it's really important that understanding your genre is important. And one of the reasons understanding your genre is important is because once you understand your genre, you will know the authors that write books that are similar to yours, and potentially you can get Amazon to promote your books based on that similarity. Now, of course, you're not going to just depend on Amazon alone. It's a potential that this will happen. But knowing the comparable authors, so authors that write books that are similar to yours, allows you to potentially be featured on that lower bottom there, allows Amazon to send out emails about your books, and then you're going to find, new readers. So, and I've seen this work somewhat with my books. And interestingly, when I was getting ready and I was doing my research for my own books, the comparable authors that I had noted down are actually the comparable authors that are currently on my Amazon author page. And that's so exciting to me because it says that Amazon is recommending my books to these types of readers, and that I've categorized my books well, I've potentially written them well, and appeal to these audiences. And so when they buy those people's books, it's very likely that Amazon can send an email to those people and say, hey, we saw that you bought this yesterday, we think you'll like this other thing too. So it's a win-win. So it's really important for you to understand who your comparable authors are. It's just going to work in your favor. Trust me on this. Another reason you want to make sure you understand your genre is because of story beats. I touch on this, right? And the books I've recommended will touch on this, but you really want to hone that in, because when somebody picks up a book that they think is a sweet romance, that book better have a happily ever after. You better not pull a Nicholas Sparks on them. Because I don't know about you, but I haven't read Nicholas Sparks' books, but I've watched the books that have been turned into movies. Do you see how they all end? Listen, if you want a good cry, let's say you want to really cry, yes, then you go watch A Walk to Remember, or you watch The Notebook, right? Even though there's romance in that, at the end, you cry. With sweet romance books, nobody's crying at the end. Everybody's happy. Oh my word, they're getting married. Oh my goodness, they're continuing on with their relationship. Oh my goodness, everything worked out. out. It doesn't mean that difficult things don't happen in sweet romance books. It just means that whatever happens in the middle of the book, by the end of the book, there should be a happily ever after. So understanding these elements is why I'm telling you to really understand your genre. Okay, so now that you understand your genre and you know who your comparable authors are, it's time to plan your book. If you read these books, they have different formulas that you can follow, but essentially what you're going to do is make sure you have a beginning, a middle, and the end, right? Make sure you're hitting the scene 1, act 1, you know, hitting all those like story beats. And this, when you understand the story beats, right, it will help you write an outline for your book. Now, depending on who you are, you may follow the outline to the T or not. So in the book writing world, there are people known as pantsers, right? And they're called pantsers because they write by the seat of their pants, which is an American colloquialism for you just like doing whatever. And then you have the plotters, the people that plot every chapter of their story, and they follow that in expanding the story and writing that full story. I personally am somewhere in between a pantser and a plotter. I usually have a plot I want to go with. I will write down an outline, and then sometimes I'm writing and the characters want to go in a different direction. That thing is real, okay? It's really real. Sometimes the character is like, I don't want to do this. And you're like, okay, we're going to write a different way, right? So plan your book, right? And it's okay if you are a pantser or a plotter. There's no real rule you should follow. If you are a strict planner, then maybe plotting is good for you. If you're like me, where sometimes you would like to ad-lib, or sometimes as you write, ideas come to you, or like your characters are like, I want to do this. Then, you know, you can do a bit of pantsing. But like I said, I'm a little bit of both. Really, I can't really call myself a plotter, and I'm not strictly a pantser. So there's room for everybody. But it's important that you plan your book, at least have some idea of what's going to go into the book, because it's going to help you do the next step, which is actually writing the book. So whether you have a rough outline or you have planned every single chapter out, now it's time to actually write the book. And usually this will depend on how long your book is, or the word count of your book. Within sweet romance, usually people expect books to be somewhere around 40 to 60,000 words. Yes, there are some longer sweet romance books out there, but usually this is where I find the sweet spot is. Sometimes, for me personally, anything beyond 250 pages for a romance, it gets to be too much for me. And I find that when the book is around 60,000 words, it's about that length, right? 60 to 70,000 words, around that length. If you write a 40,000 word book, depending on the font and everything, it's usually around 150, 160 pages, right? So when it gets to be like over 250 pages, that's a little bit much for me. I just want to read and go. So most sweet romances tend to be in that range. So based on that, I give myself around 3 to 4 months to write that book, to finish the book, from, you know, plotting to actually editing. That's what I mean by that. And so then I sit down with that plan, and then I begin to write. There are times that I will be really good, and I'll write my 1,000 to 2,000 words every single day to finish the book. And then there are times where, you know, life just happens and maybe I cannot write for a few days. It's okay, as long as you give yourself time to finish a really good product, right? You'll be okay. So for me, that time is about 3 to 4 months for one book. And usually my books are around 40,000 words. So that's about enough time to do that. There are some people, actually, if you really think about it, if you wrote 1,000 words a day, you could then finish one book in about, 6 weeks. And then the rest of the time you would use that time to do some editing, going through the story again, and so on and so forth. So anyway, this is the time that I tend to give myself, and it works. And I really think that if you want to finish your book, you should give yourself a deadline. And the way that I put fire under my own butts with these deadlines is to set up a pre-order. Now, within Amazon, you can have people pre-order your books. So you can set up the book, you can put all the things that you need to do. I have a video on how to upload a book to Amazon, right? You can watch that. But essentially at the end, you can, or towards the end, you can choose to set a pre-order date. I'll usually set a pre-order date about 3 months in advance. You can set it up to, I think, about a year in advance, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. I'll set up the pre-order such that it accommodates my 3 to 4 month timeline. But the reason this works, and then I'll submit it to Amazon as a pre-order. 2 reasons why this is helpful. Number one, once you start building a readership, people will begin to anticipate your books, and so when you put your book out there for pre-order and you tell your readers, they will go pre-order. Okay, people who love your work will go and pre-order the book, so that's money for you. Okay, the second thing is that the pre-order, usually Amazon gives you, I think, up to 72 hours prior to the pre-order date to upload your finished manuscript. Okay, if you do not submit your finished manuscript by that date, Amazon will lock you out of the pre-order option for about a year. And I don't want that to happen to me because, like I said, my first point was that's money for you, right? People are pre-ordering your book. That's money for you. So I don't want to lose that privilege. And so that really sets, I know that by this date, my manuscript has to be finished and uploaded to Amazon. So that really gives me that deadline. You know, even though I'm self-published, it gives me that deadline to like, keep going, girl, keep going. Let's talk about editing and proofreading. So when it comes to editing and proofreading, I really think that you shouldn't scrimp on this. Okay, we want to put a quality book product out there. And I'm saying book product because I really want you to think about each of your books as a product, especially whether you're trying to write, not even especially, but whether you're trying to write fiction or nonfiction, do see this as a business. If you do, you're more likely to succeed than if you don't, okay? And that's also a word for me, by the way, because sometimes I play too much. But editing and proofreading is essential because you don't want your book to be riddled with mistakes. You don't want your book to be riddled with grammatical errors, with structural errors, with, you know, you said that the person's eyes were brown in chapter 1 and then all of a sudden in chapter 10 their eyes are blue. What? Like things like that, right? They can be hard to keep straight. I remember there was this time I called, you know, in one of my books, I called the mother something in chapter 1, and by some other chapter I was calling her something else. I would not catch that if I didn't go through that editing and proofreading process. And so, yes, I will make a case for professional editing. Now, I know that this can be expensive, getting a professional editor to edit your books. Personally, currently in my current season, I proofread and edit my books myself, but that's only because I really did take a course that taught us how to edit your own book, how to self-edit your own books. So I have that skill, right? And I know what I should be looking out for. And also, when I finish writing my books, I usually will leave the book for like a week, 2 weeks alone. I'll leave the book alone and do other things. And this is why, again, you have to build all of this into that writing time. And I'll leave it alone, and then I'll come back a week or 2 later, and again, this gives me fresh eyes. So now I'm reading the manuscript with completely fresh eyes. I've usually even forgotten what I wrote about, to be honest. And then I will go through using those rules, using that structure that I learned from the course that I took. And it's always helpful. It helps me come out with a good enough book. Now, of course, I'm sure that there's some professional editors that could out-edit me, okay? But in this current season, that's what is more feasible for me, and so that's what I do. I'm also a writer in my regular job, so that gives me extra skills. But writing and editing are really 2 different things, so let's not conflate the 2. But having those editing skills have been helpful in helping me finish my book and have a good, well, you know, a good book product. Once it's all done, proofread and edited, I will give it to a couple of beta readers that I have. They read it, they give me my feedback, and I may incorporate some of the ideas that they share with me. Not everybody does the beta readers, and I think you can still succeed without beta readers, but those who, as somebody who has used beta readers, or people that read your book before it's like widely public, I find that the ideas can be really helpful, and when I've incorporated those ideas, they've made the story stronger, right? And so your editor is not a beta reader. Your ideal reader is potentially going to be a beta reader, and there are some services out there for beta readers. I just kind of built my own based on the fact that I knew people that would be willing to beta read. If you're part of a writing group, a group of writers that write in that genre, sometimes and they also read in that genre, they could be your beta readers. But there are different ways you can find beta readers. If you want me to do a whole video on that, I can research it and do a whole video on that. So let me know in the comments below. Now your book is up, your book cover is up, everything is done. It's time to market that book, baby. It really is time to market that book. There's so many people that erroneously think that by just putting a book on Amazon, people are going to rush to it and buy it and you're going to make $1 million. Not true, my friend. Not true. Although, yes, there are things that you can do to get Amazon to promote your book. That's not where a bulk of your sales are going to come from, at least in the beginning. And so this is where you want to have a marketing strategy. For me, all right, and I'm currently recording a vlog where I share one way that I market my books. I don't know if that vlog is going to be up by the time this video goes up, but one of the ways that I do this is actually by enrolling in the Amazon Kindle Unlimited program. So I enroll my books in this program, and using this, and then once I do that, I use there are services out there that allow you to market either free books or discounted books to thousands of people. And so usually when I do this, I can get, if I do the free promo, I can get thousands of downloads, and usually I'll have like maybe 5 to 10% of those people read through those books and leave me reviews. Also remember that not everybody who reads your book will leave you a review, and having those reviews helps to show people that are coming, that find me, that, oh, these are books that I could potentially read, right? This is a book that I think I will like because it's being recommended to me. And if it has social proof, aka reviews, that's helpful. So usually when I launch a book, that's one way that I get my book into the hands of readers who haven't found me yet, thousands of them. Another way you can do this is through discounted books, and there are services that do this. So I'll rattle off a few services. So there's one service I use known as Faithful Reads. This is specifically for faith-based books, so Christian books, and because I write sweet Christian romance, that's really helpful. I've also used Hello Books. I've used Robin Reads. I've used The Fussy Librarian. Okay, all right, and all of these have been phenomenal. Every time I've used them, I've had thousands of downloads of my books. It's in the hands of readers. They read, and you know, people may download your book and not read it immediately. They may read it later, you know. So whatever it is, it's still a win-win. And I definitely see once you have a series, the reason why this is important, this is not as effective when you just have one book. Now that I have multiple books, now I'm up to 7 books. What happens is that when I do a free promo on one book, and people really like it, those 5 to 10% of people that download the book and read through it and leave you a review, they're going to read the next book. And usually they'll buy the next book, or they'll read it within the Kindle Unlimited program, which you get paid for every page a person reads. And so, you know, they'll go buy that book. And sometimes I see clearly where I've done a free promo and multiple people have bought several other books. So they got the one free book, then they went and bought all the other books. So it's a win-win, to be honest. people who, whether the people read it within the next week of downloading it or they read it 3 months from now, it's a win. Because if they fall in love with your book, if you've put a good book product out there and they fall in love with your book, they will go on to read through the rest of your books. And currently I have a read through rate. This is people who bought book 1 and have read through to, I think, book 4 of a particular series. I calculated that to be around 47%, which is phenomenal. That means 100 people started reading book 1, and by the end, by book 4, 47 people had read up to the whole series. So that's incredible to me, and there are ways to calculate this as well. That's really, really incredible to me, and I'm very grateful. So having a marketing plan, this is just one way I market my books, but I wanted to share that with you. It's quite effective and I'm super happy with it. So that's how I write and sell books on Amazon. Did you enjoy this video? Let me know if you did. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below.